Hi guys, so today I'm going to talk about the 6 themes of world history, and we're going to be calling them Spice Tea. Okay, so there's 6 different themes or concepts that we'll talk about throughout the course of the school year, again and again and again. It applies to all of world history, different civilizations, regions of the world, etc. And so those Spice Teas, what that stands for, is social, political, interaction, culture, economics, and technology. So we're going to use Spice Tea a lot, and it's definitely going to help you out throughout the course of the year to kind of remember what those things are. So Spice Tea, social, political, interaction, culture, economics, and technology. Okay, so to dive in a little bit as to what exactly that means. So social, that's going to have to do with the development and transformation of social structures throughout history. And so concepts and ideas that fall into that category of social are going to be class structure, social mobility and barriers. So how easy or difficult is it for people to move up and down the social structure? Gender roles and relations. So typically throughout different histories, what's the different roles of men and women, and how do men and women interact with each other? Family and kinship, racial and ethnic constraints, freedom and rights, and urbanization, which urbanization has to do with kind of the building of cities and people moving into cities, that kind of thing. The next one is political. Let me move me out of the way here. Okay. Political, so it has to do with state building, expansion, and conflict. Think kind of the government. So those things are conflict and wars, what type of government and the leadership, what kind of leaders do they have, etc. Nations and nationalism, um, regional, trans-regional, and global structures and organizations, revolts and revolutions, and legal court systems. So think, anything having to do with the government is going to kind of fit into that political category. Okay. Then next, we have interaction. So this is interactions between humans and the environment. So how do humans interact with kind of nature and the environment around them? So the impact of natural barriers. So if you live on an island, right, that's going to impact your interaction with your environment. Um, different diseases, natural resources, right? What kind of foods grow naturally in those areas, which kind of foods don't grow, so you have to trade for things like that. Migration, pollution, deforestation, the type of demography you have, type of animals, that's going to be a big one, right? The type of animals that are natural to the area in which you live, and settlement patterns, right? Traditionally, in early history, people settle near fresh water, so rivers and lakes. And then as time goes on and we learn more and develop more technology, right now people can live more or less anywhere, and we have ways to get them water. Um, then we have culture, which is going to be the development and interaction between different cultures. So different things that fall into this category, anything to do with culture. Culture is very broad, so a lot of the times you're going to be like, well, that's kind of culture, that's kind of culture. So art and architecture, language, education, religion, of course, clothing, food, music, writing, right, style, all that kind of stuff is going to fit into culture. And then the last two, we have economic and technology. So economic is the creation and expansion and interaction of economic systems. So think money, right? That's typically what people think of when we talk about economic, but it's more than just money. It's going to be material wealth, right? So money and things you could buy, industrialization, labor systems, right? How do people work in a specific government or civilization? The type of money they use, right? The dollar, the pound, the peso, what kind of agriculture systems they have, how is wealth distributed? Is everybody pretty wealthy? Is there a really rich, small, rich elite? and everybody else is poor, right? And then trade and commerce, and trade is going to be huge. We're going to talk about trade a bunch throughout world history. So, how do people trade? What do they trade with? What items do they trade? Who do they trade with? All those kinds of things. And then technology, human adaptation and innovation through technological advances. So technology and innovation. So technology, right, different inventions, science, math, different weapons that are developed, tools, calendars, machines, medicine, all that stuff is going to be encompassed into the kind of the topic of technology. So now what you could do is you could take a minute, you could pause the video, and in your textbook, you could browse through chapter 6, pages 126 to 149, and you could take a minute to pick one of those spice teas. I know on here it says that you're assigned, but go ahead and pick any one you want, and try and find an example for one of those things. So take a minute, pick political, economic, social, and try and find an example in the textbook that would fit into one of those categories. Okay, and last thing we're going to talk about today are the different processes that we're going to use as we go through world history. So the three big things we're going to work with as we learn about world history are comparison, causation, and continuity and change over time. So comparison is going to be similarities and differences. So how do different civilizations, different time periods in history compare and contrast from each other? So what are things that are staying the same, and what are things that are different? Africa to the Americas to Europe, Asia to Africa. How do those different civilizations are they different and similar? And then we're going to look even more into how are they similar and different in their technology, similar and different in their culture, similar and different in their economic systems, that kind of thing. Then we'll look at causation, so cause and effect, right? What are things that happened that cause something to happen, and then what are the effects of those causes? Right? A river goes dry, so now people move, and because they move into another territory, which then has a war, right? So the river went dry, people had to move, now they encounter another tribe, and that breaks into a war. So kind of cause and effect. The war started because the river went dry, because the people moved, right? That kind of, or because the people moved because the river went dry, that kind of thing. And then continuity and change over time. So how do different parts of the world stay the same and change over time? How does political structures continue and stay the same over time, or and change over time? And then, of course, like I mentioned earlier, kind of tying those together back to comparison. So what did the Americas look like 1,000 years ago? What do they look like today? And what has continued and changed over time? Government structures, economic structures, culture, that kind of thing. Okay, so again, if you need to, you could rewind this video, review these things, the spice tea, social, political, interaction, culture, economic, and technology. We're going to use that a lot week in and week out. Same with these processes, comparison, causation, and continuity and change over time. And again, continuity and change over time tends to confuse some kids every once in a while, and that's just simply what things are staying the same and what things are changing. How are they continuing as time goes on, and how are they changing as time goes on?